The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of election, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is July 2nd, 2014. Tonight, I'm going to be doing the broadcast that I wanted to do for you last week, but we had technical difficulties here on my end with my computer and everything else last week. So because I had the technical difficulties, I wanted to redo the broadcast for you all because this is an important subject to talk about. What subject could that be? Well, that would be the Logical Fallacy class. Logical Fallacies 202, the second level from where we are. We were at Logical Fallacies 101. That was the level that we were at for the past, I'd say, year and a half. Me going over this stuff with you, talking with you about logical fallacies, pointing them out. Now we're going to go to the next level. We're going to go to what I call Logical Fallacy Class 202. Just like, for those of you out there that don't understand the whole 101, 202 reference, just like if you were in college here in America, or, even some high school classes will say, 101 or 201. But it's the base of, it's like 101 would be the base knowledge. 201 is the next step, the more advanced of the class. You had to take 101 as a prereq for 201. And you've all had enough time to do your homework about basics of logical fallacies and things like that. And I'll be covering a couple of the basic ones tonight too. But we're going to be getting into a few more. And you're going to all, anybody that's got a computer, if you're driving in your car, you won't be able to follow along. But all of you will be able to follow along with me tonight. If you're in front of your computer, or if you have, say you're playing it on Facebook on a tab or something, because we have a cool embedded Facebook player. So if you're on Facebook or whatever, if you're on your tab, your tablet, whatever the hell they call them, your little tiny phablet, the phones, right? Like a Samsung Galaxy Note 2, 3, or whatever numbers they're on now, any of those, and you're happening to be listening that way, you're listening via TuneIn. Well, go to your web browser. If you're on your computer, go to your web browser, open up a new tab. I'm going to tell you what to type in because you're going to follow along with me. We're going to do this like it's a class tonight. Okay? And I like to do this with you. I like to be interactive and go through things with you kind of in an interactive way because it helps you learn a little bit better, and it's just fun for us to do, right? It's kind of like a bonding experience for all of us. We're all learning together. Maybe in the future, you'll be like, oh, Logical Fallacies 201. I remember Professor Popeye's class, 2014. That was great. Yeah, okay. Anyway, little humor. So, you all have your tabs open, separate little tab open in your browser. Everybody ready now? I tried to give you enough time. Okay. Type in yourlogicalfallacyis.com. Yourlogicalfallacyis.com. Now, this is not my website, so we know. Okay. I don't make any money off this site. They don't give me any money to promote the site. I'm not paid to promote the site in any shape or form. They haven't even given me free, posters or anything like that. Nothing of the sort. Okay, nothing of the sort. I promote this site because you can go to it yourself, and you can use it as a reference point. Now, you can order the posters from the site, which that's cool. They have logical fallacy posters. I think it's more of they're pretty cheap. It's not like they're trying to make money off it. It's more so they're trying to get the information out there, and then obviously the money probably keeps the website up and running. We all know how expensive that could be, but I'm sure they don't make a bazillion dollars off of them. But hopefully, one or two people have bought them. Now, when you go to the site, there is one thing you're going to notice, that some of the stuff they use in the examples for each of the fallacies, which we'll go through. You might notice that there is what you might consider to be somewhat of a liberal-minded bent when, or what I should say is what is put forward today as quote-unquote liberal-minded bent on some of the examples. But don't get bogged down in that. And I bring this up because I could just ignore it, but I bring it up because I know what will happen. People will go and they'll learn about the fallacy, and they'll get down to the example on the bottom, and when they read the example on the bottom, they're going to get so turned off by maybe something that the example says because they know that perhaps maybe the person that wrote that example didn't have the full, like in one example, I think they talk about vaccines, and the example is given that the person that wouldn't want to take the vaccines, if I remember correctly, was the person that was not thinking correctly. And you might read that and get turned off, right? So the reason I tell you about this is so that way you know it's there already, but you know that when you see that, to kind of I don't want to say blow it off, but you gotta, the stuff that triggers that emotional response in us, that, oh, screw them, look at this idiot, right? If you don't agree with something they say, even if they're wrong, you almost fall prey to that same mentality that you're trying to break yourself free from, right? That using logic. So I want to tell everyone, I always, anytime I use an example or I play something with logical fallacies, like when I've played audio clips before, if the person uses an example that I know that someone somewhere is going to be, oh my God, blah, 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 reason I bring it up is to point it out so that you know it's already there, and I can shoot down that argument before it even becomes a problem later on and interrupts your learning curve. Okay, I don't want it to interrupt the process of you understanding what's going on and learning about logical fallacies. I don't want you to get sidetracked because you get pissed off at an example given. So some of the examples, I'll just give my own examples. It's easier, more of a universal example as best I can, and just know that when you research logical fallacies and stuff, you will come across somebody that really is educated, but perhaps their political beliefs are different than yours, and maybe if they give an example, it might show in the example. Put that aside, because the information about logical fallacies is spot on, and you need to pay attention to it. So often that, getting angry at that, the example itself is almost a form of a logical fallacy. Anyway, I want to get into it. So, logical fallacies 201. Logical fallacies 201. Good stuff. Okay? So, everybody I hope is on your logical fallacies. Not your logical fallacies. Your logical fallacy is.com. Your logical fallacy is.com. Front page, you're going to see it says, thou shalt not commit logical fallacies. And it's got two columns, or what looks like two sets of columns, on the left and on the right. We're going to start over on the left side. This is what I did last week. Okay, we're going to start over on the left side, and we're going to work our way from left to right, and then down. So we're going to go left to right, and then back to to the left, work to the right, and then working each way down the left side, and then we'll do the right side. Now, the first one you'll see is straw man, which I've talked about before. If you click on it, right, it'll open up the page for straw man itself, and this is how we're going to navigate through this for each one. So you open up the page, and anybody that listens to this broadcast later on in the archives, you can do this too. That's the beauty of the interactive show. Right? You can go back and you can listen to the archive. You can log on your browser, whatever time you have a chance to sit down, and you can listen to the show. And as I'm talking, you can scroll through them. So it'll be a good broadcast, and of course, it'll be filled with information. So let's start off with the straw man. And you're looking at the page. You're going to see each one of them has a little avatar, right? And you'll see the avatar, and then underneath it'll say whatever the fallacy is, and then it tells you the description, and then there's a brief example of the fallacy. Next to it, there's an arrow on either side, left or right. We're going to always scroll to the right, so it makes it easier to follow, reading left to right. So the little arrow, the little black arrow on the right is when you hear me say, click the black arrow, move on to the next one. That's what we're going to do. So, first one we're going to start off with is straw man, right? The straw man argument. You misrepresented someone's argument to make it easier to attack. Very simple. This is one of the basics you learned in Logical Fallacies 101. Again, you misrepresented someone's argument to make it easier to attack. It's like when someone says, well, I'm about smaller government, and I don't think the government should be intruding into people's rights. And I don't, I'm waving my Gadsden flag because, the history of the Gadsden flag, and I'm for small government, and I feel I'm a patriot. And in return, someone says, you wave that Gadsden flag, you want to kill cops, and you're a sovereign citizen. You must want to hurt people. You must be an extremist. And you're like, no, I never talked about that. I talked about the fact that government needs to be smaller, and we need to get rid of perhaps maybe the Federal Reserve and the IRS. Oh, you're an extremist. That's why you have that flag. See, they can't take on your argument because they don't have a valid response to it or a valid argument to fight back with. So instead, they make a straw man, a much weaker argument that they could come up and kick the crap out of, box with, right? Knock it around. Very, very easy to understand. Basic, simple, Logical Fallacies 101. By exaggerating, misrepresenting, or just completely fabricating someone's argument, it's much easier to present your own position as being reasonable. But this kind of dishonesty serves to undermine honest, rational debate. By exaggerating, misrepresenting, or just completely fabricating someone's argument, it's much easier to present your own position as being reasonable. But this kind of dishonesty serves to undermine honest, rational debate. How many times do you see the straw man argument being used? Now, it's really important to know and understand this, because the straw man is one of the, now all the other ones too, but the straw man is one of the ones that is used on you on a daily basis. When you turn on the news, right, this is constantly going on. Whenever MSNBC or CNN uses the term conspiracy theorist or, crazy right-wing nut job or blah, 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 blah. They're framing a straw man argument. They might be using appeal to emotion to help make it. They might be using other fallacies, but that's a straw man argument itself because they can't debate the person. They won't debate the person on the actual topic, right? Well, illegal immigration. Well, we should really secure the borders. Well, the straw man argument to that would be you just want to secure the borders because you're racist and you don't care about innocent people coming across and the human suffering and you're like, no, I totally care about human suffering, but we need to secure the country. No, you just want children to die and you don't care about migrants. And it's just a quick example, but I don't want to get involved in the politics of the whole border thing right now. That's for another show. But the point is, you see my point. Any subject, this is used. Understand the straw man. It's one of the basics, but you have to understand it. I couldn't repeat this enough. It's used every day. Every day. It's like we should cut back on some of the money we give to the military-industrial complex. That means you want troops to die. No, I never said that. That's a straw man argument. And that's an easily defeated argument. That's why. They won't say, well, why should we cut the budget? Well, there's a lot of money being wasted here and a lot of money being wasted here and people making money hand over fist here and there. And we spend all this money on blowing things up and killing. Maybe we should, use some of that money to fix the infrastructure and other things. Oh, you just want troops to die. You want to weaken our national defense. No, but being in debt like we do weakens our national defense. You're a terrorist. You see, and you can see how it can just go right down in like 30 seconds or less, right downhill. So again, it's important to understand the basics. Straw man, fallacy. You misrepresented someone's argument to make it easier to attack. Moving on. Click that little black arrow on the right side. The next one, it should be a snowflake with a skull on the top of it. False cause. You presume that a real or perceived relationship between things means that one is the cause of the other. Many people confuse correlation, things happening together or in sequence, for causation, that one thing actually causes the other to happen. Sometimes correlation is coincidental, or it may be attributable to a common cause. Many people confuse correlation, thus things happening together or in a sequence, for causation. That one thing may actually cause the other. Sometimes correlation is coincidental or it may be attributable to a common cause. Now I'll give you the example that they give on the bottom. They use the term global warming. Just look past it and just try to understand. Pointing to a fancy chart, Roger shows how temperatures have been rising over the past few centuries, while at the same time the numbers of pirates have been decreasing. Thus, pirates cool the world and global warming is a hoax. Now, again, you could, like I said, don't get involved and sidetracked by the politics of it. Just, you can see the example, okay? How you can take one thing and put it to another and, oh, look, this correlates with this, and it doesn't. False cause. You presumed that a real or perceived relationship between things means that one is the cause of the other, when it is not. Okay, perfect example of false cause is when the media tries to get you to believe that if you speak about quote-unquote conspiracy theories or if you question the government, that you're just going to cause people to run out and kill cops. Remember they blamed the alternative media a couple weeks ago? And they even went after Jones and said he should apologize for the stuff he says. And they kept trying to push that there was this relationship. And it wasn't. It was false. Even if they actually believe that stuff, it's not just, see, they come on TV and report the news. You remember, it's like a live action play. The people in the studio sometimes don't even realize that they're playing a part. But it's not about that. Remember, it's about how you see it on that little square box that you watch it on your phone, your tablet, your computer, your TV. It's how it's presented to you, ladies and gentlemen, because it comes through the TV as a credible source. You're not in the studio. You don't see what actually goes on. False cause. You presume that a real or perceived relationship between things means that one is the cause of the other. They should actually change MSNBC's name, the station name, to False Cause. They should just call it the Logical Fallacy Network. That would be better. Anyway, moving on to the right, click the little arrow. Appeal to emotion. The avatar is a red, well, not a red heart, a white heart on a black background. Again, the little black and white avatars for each of them. Funny how I said red. As soon as I saw the shape of the heart, my brain instantly thought of the color red. Interesting. Anyway, appeal to emotion. This one is used constantly. It's for the kids. If you let people smoke pot legally, kids will die. Appeal to emotion. You attempted to manipulate an emotional response in place of a valid or compelling argument. This is actually one that I took a screenshot of and I cut it out and I made a meme for the Florida Sheriff's Department. I took their website, don'tletfloridagoTopot.com. I took a screenshot of the front of it because right on the front they have and I don't have it in front of me right now, but it's somewhat along the lines of, your kids will have, if medical cannabis passes, your kids will have easier access to pot. Dun, 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 dun. It's just so stupid. So it's a blatant appeal to the parents' emotion about being afraid for their child's welfare and their safety in the future. So I actually took a screenshot of it, and I cut it out, and then I took a screenshot of their website, and I put it over top of it with red arrows pointing to it. And then I put, appeals to emotion are not a valid argument, therefore fail. And it's the truth. Fail, 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 and fail. The appeal to emotion. You attempted to manipulate an emotional response in place of a valid or compelling argument. How many times do you see the government do that? All the time. How many times do you see, and I hate using the word the government, how many times do you see the powers that shouldn't be doing that? All the time. How many times do you see the news media doing that? All the time. We need to ban guns or you're not going to be safe. You could, oh my God, these people want to kill you in the mall. You're not safe unless we ban guns. Ban guns, ban guns, ban guns. We need to ban guns. Appeal to emotion. Ban guns, ban guns, ban guns. Be afraid. Be so afraid. Be afraid. Appeal to emotion. It's for the kids after all. We just don't want kids to get hurt. You can't smoke pot because it's for the kids. I mean, there's so many kids out there that'll suffer. Right, there's so many kids that are suffering because you won't allow them to have access to cannabis. But don't even get me started. Appeals to emotion. Appeals to emotion include appeals to fear. Oh, fancy that. What's the first one? It's kind of like the ingredients list on your food. Usually the first thing listed is the most prevalent, and then it works its way down. Think about that while I read this. Appeals to emotion include appeals to fear. Envy. Oh, we see that all the time. Hatred. Check. Pity. Check. Pride. And more. I'm going to repeat that. Appeals to emotion include appeals to fear, envy, hatred, pity, pride, and more. It's important to note that sometimes a logical, coherent argument may inspire emotion or have an emotional aspect. But the problem and fallacy occurs when emotion is used instead of a logical argument, or to obscure the fact that no compelling rational reason exists for one's position. Everyone, bar sociopaths, is affected by emotion, and so appeals to emotion are very common and effective argument tactics. But they're ultimately flawed, dishonest, and tend to make one's opponents justifiably emotional. I'm going to read that description again for you. Appeals to emotion include appeals to fear, envy, hatred, pity, pride, and more. It's important to note that sometimes a logical, coherent argument may inspire emotion or have an emotional aspect. Remember, it is important to note that. But the problem and fallacy occurs when emotion is used instead of a logical argument or to obscure the fact that no compelling rational reason exists for one's position. Everyone, bar sociopaths, is affected by emotion. And so appeals to emotion are very common. I will repeat that part again. Appeals to emotion are very common and an effective argument tactic. But they're ultimately flawed, dishonest, and tend to make one's opponents justifiably emotional. Example: Luke didn't want to eat his sheep's brains with chopped liver and Brussels sprouts, but his father told him to think about the poor, starving children in a third world country who weren't fortunate enough to have any food at all. That's exactly what the government does to you. They treat you like Luke not wanting to eat his Brussels sprouts and goat's brain or whatever the hell it was, sheep's brains. We're the kid that doesn't want to eat sheep's brains and Brussels sprouts. And our parents, the powers that shouldn't be, are using the appeal to emotion on us. My mother used that on me a couple times when I was a kid. Think of all the starving children in China, little Popeye. You won't eat your food. What about the starving kids in China? That didn't get me to eat it either. Also, serving it to me for breakfast the next morning didn't get me to eat it either. All it did was make me really hungry. So dinner time came around the following night, and I was pretty much ready to eat anything that my mother served me. Anyway, I'll pause it right there because the break is sneaking up on us. When we get back, we will pick up where we left off. Right at the top, we finished the top row on the left side. We're going to rip through the rest of the left column, and in an hour or two, we'll finish the other column. Good broadcast tonight. Very educational and informative. Again, the website we're working with is yourlogicalfallacyis.com. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. So, Logical Fallacies 201 this evening. Again, we are using the website yourlogicalfallacyis.com. Go to the website. Again, if you're listening in the archives, the beauty of doing one of these shows is that no matter when you listen to the broadcast, you can go back and you can hit the site, and you can, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, whenever, 5, 6 days from now, a year from now, whenever. As long as the website, yourlogicalfallacyis.com, is still up, you can go there and you can follow along with the broadcast and you'll learn. It's kind of like an interactive class, right? Except I'm the cool professor and I make learning fun. Right? There's one problem with learning. Professors, teachers, if you guys actually want to do your jobs, don't even get me started about the whole dumbing down of society and everything else, but if you guys actually want to do your jobs, which would be awesome, make learning fun. Because I had some great subjects, like I love history, and I had a history teacher that made you want to shoot yourself in the head while you were listening to him talk. He was so monotone. Like, really? Do you have a personality at all? Maybe you could mix that in a little bit? And now they're not allowed to teach anything anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, I'm going to make learning fun and hip and cool again. Anyway, back to it. yourlogicalfallacyis.com. We were on appeal to emotion. We finished it up. Get ready. Click that little black arrow on the right side. Boom. Should move us to the next one. The fallacy. The fallacy, Popeye, huh? Yeah. You presumed that because a claim has been poorly argued or a fallacy has been made, that the claim itself must be wrong. So, not everything is a logical fallacy. And this coming from the guy that constantly loads the logical fallacy crossbow up and, you know what I mean? But not everything is a fallacy. And I would be remiss if I said to you, or if I didn't say to you, that you need to not fall into the trap of thinking that something is a fallacy just because it was poorly argued. The claim itself could be completely valid. I mean, somebody could be making a completely non-false, accurate claim, and they just don't know how to argue. Or they maybe use logical fallacies and they are poorly argumentative. Well, the use of logical fallacies would indicate that, though, anyway, in and of itself. But you get my point. So, the fallacy. You presume that because a claim has been poorly argued or a fallacy has been made, that the claim itself must be wrong. It is entirely possible to make a claim that is false, yet argue with logical coherency for that claim. I've seen it. baffling you with bullshit. Okay, that's exactly what that is. It's entirely possible to make a claim that is false, yet argue with logical coherency for that claim. The news media and the powers that shouldn't be do it all the time. Just as it is possible to make a claim that is true and justify it with various fallacies and poor arguments. And they do that as well. I'm going to read that to you again without interrupting it this time for you. It is entirely possible to make a claim that is false, yet argue with logical coherency for that claim, just as it is possible to make a claim that is true and justify it with various fallacies and poor arguments. Example. Recognizing that Amanda had committed a fallacy in arguing that we should eat healthy food because a nutritionist said it was popular, Elise said we should therefore eat bacon double cheeseburgers every day. I'm going to read the example to you again. Remember, you presumed that because the claim has been poorly argued or a fallacy has been made, the claim itself must be wrong. So in the example, Amanda had committed a fallacy in arguing that eating healthy is better for you and we should do it because a nutritionist said it was popular. Only because the nutritionist said it was popular is she eating the healthy food. Okay, that's her basis for it. That's her argument that everybody should do it because the nutritionist said you should do it. So that is a fallacy. That's the appeal to authority. So you have this appeal to authority. Oh my God, the nutritionist, they must know everything. So I have to say what the nutritionist says. If the nutritionist told you to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you follow suit? Right? You have to look at it like that. You have to use your own brain. Think. Think for yourself. That's what personal responsibility is. Anyway, in the example, the girl Amanda, she committed the fallacy by saying that. So because she committed that fallacy, her friend committed a fallacy in return by saying, well, then we should just eat bacon double cheeseburgers every day. Because obviously eating healthy, you committed a fallacy by saying that, so you're wrong and your claim is wrong. Well, no, you should eat healthy, but not because the nutritionist says so, because you should eat healthy because that's what your body requires. That's actually a fact. I mean, that's an argument for it. If you said to me, Popeye, why should I eat healthy? Well, it's got so much, if you're eating the proper foods, has nutritional benefits for your body, which in turn can help your body fight disease and stay healthy and boost your immune system like we're supposed to. You'll age better. You'll live a healthier life. You'll have more energy. You'll be naturally skinnier. The obesity problem in this country would go down. That's all facts. But if I turn around and said, well, a nutritionist said that, it'd be good to eat healthy. No, it's not. That's appeal to authority. Okay. But it's also wrong if I turn around. This is where the fallacy, the one we're talking about, comes into play. If I turn around and someone's arguing that fact about eating healthy to me, and I turn around and go, well, because your argument sucks, that means your claim itself is garbage. No. There's multiple facets to an intelligent, fact-filled, logic-filled debate. Yes, the person could have a valid point, but they just don't know how to argue it because they don't know the facts. How many times do you see that with quote-unquote truthers, or whatever you want to call conspiracy theorists, whatever they want to call us, right? People that talk openly, humans, your fellow people that talk about this stuff. How about that? How many times do you see somebody that only knows the tip of the iceberg and they don't understand the full thing? So they just rush in headlong. And people will instantly say, well, your conclusion that, say it's about 9/11, your conclusion that 9/11 was, quote, an inside job or the government perpetrated it in some fashion is wrong and invalid because you poorly argued it, you used a fallacy, or your facts were, you didn't have all the facts, so you run in head first and you're just not ready. It's like running into battle without having full battle rattle on. It's like running in your underwear and leaving your gun back at the base and just, screw it. I'm going to go in with my K-bar. I know the basics. A little bit. So we do fall prey to that fallacy ourselves as well. Anyway, the fallacy. So understanding this is important because, again, it's used against us. Like I just said, if you have limited information about what you're arguing about, and you run headlong into a debate about it, because a lot of people want to do that, and that's fine, but get educated first, or at least educate yourself to the facts, right? People run headlong into the debate, and the person on the other side, the debunkers, will turn around and they commit the fallacy. They think that your conclusion is wrong because you poorly argued it, and it's not. So it's important to go over these like this. Again, I don't expect any of you to walk away from this tonight and being like, oh my God, Popeye, thank you so much. I'm now enlightened. You're going to have to listen to the broadcast 3 or 4 times. You're going to have to research this stuff. You're going to have to replay it over in your head. I'm not saying you're stupid. What I'm saying is you're going to have to do this because you have to reprogram your brains. This is how we all do it. I know a lot of people that back in the day to undo a lot of the programming, they unplugged from TV, and myself included, and I have a little video player, a little MP3 video player, and I loaded it up with as many movies as I could find, documentaries about real stuff. And I would watch that stuff, and I still do sometimes. And when people would ask me, how come I've watched the same documentary 2 or 3 times? Because there's something you missed, you pick it up again. And what it's doing is it's unprogramming your brain from all the crap that's been put in there for all these years. And it's starting to put in some factual information. But again, that also depends on which documentaries you go through. You have to use your discernment and your brain. You're all super smart creatures. You're all super intelligent individuals. And I have faith in you that you can all do it. That's why I do these broadcasts. I don't get paid for doing this. I don't make a red cent doing this. My payment, my reward comes when I get emails from you people telling me that this broadcast, a broadcast I do helps you, and you learn something from this, and you were able to not only see through the BS on TV and all that, but you were able to take this and apply it to your everyday, real-world life, because that's where real change is going to come from. The law of correspondence. Like the Masons say, as above, so below. Where do you think they got that little nifty motto from? They took it from the law of correspondence. In the micro, in the macro. You change within yourself, you will change the world for a better place. So if you make yourself a bad person, you make the world a bad place. If you change yourself for a good person, you will make the world, as I said, a better place. And that's what these shows are about, is helping everybody to come up to that next level so you're on a more level playing field. Remember, a lot of the people that perpetrate these fallacies, some of these highly educated people, they know what they're doing in many instances. Not all of them. Some of them are just idiots, and useful idiots at that. But many of them, many of them know what they're doing. So you have to know too, so you're on an even playing field. Anyway, I've babbled enough. Take your mouse, hover it over that black arrow on the right side once again, and click away. Now we move on to the next fallacy, the slippery slope fallacy. You said that if we allow A to happen, then Z will eventually happen too. Therefore, A should not happen. The problem with this reasoning is that it avoids engaging with the issue at hand and instead shifts attention to extreme hypotheticals. Because no proof is presented to show that such extreme hypotheticals will in fact occur, this fallacy has the form of an appeal to emotion fallacy by leveraging fear. In effect, the argument at hand is unfairly tainted by unsubstantiated conjecture. Example, Colin Closet asserts that if we allow same-sex couples to marry, then the next thing we know we'll be allowing people to marry their parents, their cars, and even monkeys. That is a perfect example of the slippery slope, and it happens all the time. I mean, again, the appeal to emotion via fear. If we allow people to continually to legally have firearms, and we don't install a new gun ban across this country, more children are going to die. Because guns are responsible for death. It's the gun's fault. It's the gun's fault, right? Oh my God. If we allow people to have freedom of speech in this country, then the next thing, and they can say whatever they want about the government, then the next thing you know, they'll be calling on air for a revolution, and we can't have that. I mean, what happens if a police officer got hurt because somebody called for, somebody said something on air, and some crazy nutbag somewhere in the country took it literally and went off? Huh? What about that? Oh my God, we can't have that. We can't have freedom of speech because if and what about oh my God, you offended somebody? If you offend somebody, then they might go out and they might purchase a gun and then later on get pissed off and then start killing a bunch of college students in California. Oh my God, if you hadn't offended him, if he hadn't been offended, that would, and if he didn't have guns, that wouldn't have happened. So freedom of speech and guns have to go. Do you see how fast you could go? Slippery slope. That fast. We say it all the time. Again, you said that if we allow A to happen, then Z will eventually happen too. Therefore, A should not happen. Cannabis. Oh my God, if we legalize cannabis, there's going to be kids in the street dead. There's going to be new drug addicts. Kids will be making up excuses to get drugs. I hate to tell you, Sheriff, but they already do that. Adults do that. Again, an appeal to emotion in the form of fear. Oh my God. They leverage fear against you. Slippery slope fallacy, ladies and gentlemen. Another one that is used against us on a daily basis. One of my favorites to talk about. Coming up. Click that button to the right. That little black arrow should move over. The next little symbol you should see, it should be like a symbol of like a person, and then there's a pair of crosshairs on it. The ad hominem attack. It's the page you should be on. Ad hominem attack. You attack your opponent's character or personal traits in an attempt to undermine their argument. Ad hominem attacks can take the form of overtly attacking somebody or more subtly casting doubt on their character or personal attributes as a way to discredit their argument. The result of an ad hominem attack can be to undermine someone's case without actually having to engage with the case or argument itself. How many times has that happened? You see it on a daily basis. Here's evidence that the Project for a New American Century, before 9/11, put out their own white paper, their little treatise, if you will, called Rebuilding America's Defenses. And in Rebuilding America's Defenses, it says that, we'd like to do all this imperialism, blah, 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 nation building, building the empire, but we won't be able to unless we have a new Pearl Harbor. And all of the same people that were involved in writing that later went into the Bush administration. And 9/11 happened. There's evidence. That's just a piece of evidence itself to show you. That's just one small piece. You're a conspiracy theorist, tinfoil nut wearing retard who lives in your mom's basement. No, there's evidence. Oh, I have other evidence too. I mean, there's tons of evidence. No, you're a conspiracy theorist. But there were war games going on that day, and one of the war games actually involved flying planes into No. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a retard. You're an idiot. How many times do you hear that kind of stuff? I could go on, but you get my drift. Okay? The ad hominem attack. Again, you attack your opponent's character or personal traits in an attempt to undermine their argument. Ad hominem attacks can take the form of overtly attacking somebody or more subtly casting doubt on their character or personal attributes as a way to discredit their argument. The result of an ad hominem attack can be to undermine someone's case without actually having to engage with it. Happens all the time. Rather than debate you on the topic at hand or the actual facts, they will just call you a conspiracy theorist or whatever other pejorative they want to throw at you. The ad hominem attack. Moving on. Click the little black arrow to the right. Now, this is another one of my favorites. It happens all the time. You'll see this in your personal life. You'll see it, at work. You'll see it when you try to debate people about anything or even have regular conversations with people. You'll see it. Tu quo qui. Answering criticism with criticism. Tu quo qui. You avoided having to engage with criticism by turning it back on the accuser. You answered criticism with criticism. Pronounced tu quo qui, literally translating as you too, this fallacy is also known as the appeal to hypocrisy. It is commonly employed as an effective red herring because it takes the heat off someone having to defend their argument and instead shifts the focus back on the person making the criticism. You see this one all the time. I'm sure you experience this in your personal life. You'll say something maybe to your significant other. Hey, hun, I noticed you didn't wash the dishes today. And your significant other turns around and snaps back, well, you leave your damn shoes in the middle of the house all the time. And although it may be a valid point that you do leave your shoes in the middle of the house all the time, they answered criticism with criticism. Now, why did I use that example? Because it's a real world example that you'll see in your life every day. Now that I use that, you're going to be like, what? As soon as it happens the next time, it's going to pop in your head. You're going to be like, hey, wait a minute. This person, whoever it is answering my criticism with criticism. Now, even if someone's being a jerk or a smartass when they're criticizing you, and they're just, because some people are like that, they want to be critical of everything. Again, engaging them and engaging in the tu quo qui fallacy itself, the appeal to hypocrisy itself, if you engage in that, you're not helping your case any. Okay, and you're just going to give, if the other person knows how to, debate, they might just point that out. Remember, you don't know who knows logical fallacies. Don't assume people don't know them just because they commit them. They might know them, and maybe they commit them on purpose. So there's always that. Tu quo qui, avoiding criticism, or answering criticism rather, with criticism, or otherwise known as the appeal to hypocrisy. All right, moving on. Click the right arrow. And I can never say this word. It's personal incredulity. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but I really don't care because I could never say that word. It's like one word that my tongue will just not allow me to pronounce. It's got a little question mark. And what looks like the little hook that Captain Hook would attach his hook to his arm. I know, my mind is very off. Anyway, it's a little question mark is the little avatar. Because you found something difficult to understand, oh, this happens all the time, because you found something difficult to understand or are unaware of how it works, you made out like it's probably not true. How many times do you run into this when you're trying to talk to somebody about the government, what powers it shouldn't be, whatever, 9/11, Oklahoma City bombing, anything, false flag terrorism, vaccines, anything. You've done the research, you understand how everything works, so you try explaining stuff to people, and because they don't understand what you're talking about, they stare at you like a deer in headlights, and then they say, well, because I don't understand it, then you must possibly be wrong. You have to be wrong, because I don't get it. So I guess like every person that goes to school and doesn't know what they're doing, even if they don't understand what the teacher's saying, then the teacher must be wrong, right? Complex subjects like biological evolution through natural selection require some amount of understanding before one is able to make an informed judgment about the subject at hand. This fallacy is usually used in place of that understanding. Now, again, they're talking about some people get pissed off, again, the debate of evolution versus creationism. We're not here for that tonight, okay? I'm not going to get sidetracked with that. That's not what we're here for. Just understand that if you don't understand something, that just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not true or accurate. Okay? That's basically what you can learn from this fallacy. Because you found something difficult to understand or are unaware of how it works, you made out like it's probably not true. And we don't think that just because you're, awake, whatever you want to call it, aware, informed a little bit, I guess is the way to put it, that you are, don't think that you can't fall prey to these. That I never do these anymore. I know about logical fallacies. No, you will. I know about them and I catch myself doing it. We've been programmed to, I'm in my late 30s. Right? If they had taught me this when I was a kid, it would be natural thinking. It's the way that's the way schools used to teach. They used to teach this stuff, the trivium. Okay, they used to teach a lot of this stuff. They don't teach logical fallacies, and if they do, it's done in a way that's still twisting it to push a certain ideology, even if it's underneath, and using the logical fallacies as a way to try to shoot the other side down, which in and of itself is like committing massive amount of logical fallacies. So, anyway, moving on to the next one. Click on the little black arrow on the right. Boom. The avatar is a guy on his knees, looks like pleading or praying, begging. And that's appropriate because the name of the fallacy is called special pleading. You moved the goalposts or made an exception when your claim was shown to be false. Oh, you mean like the invasion of Iraq? Weapons of mass destruction. Where are they? They're not over here. Oh, well, we did it to free them. I thought we did it because they were WMDs and they were involved. You guys were spouting off that they were initially involved in 9/11. We never said that. Really? Really? Where did people get the idea in their brains that Iraq was responsible for 9/11? Anyway, humans are funny creatures and have a foolish aversion to being wrong. You could say that again. Rather than appreciate the benefits of being able to change one's mind through better understanding, many will invent ways to cling to old beliefs. One of the most common ways that people do this is to rationalize a reason why what they thought to be true must remain to be true. It's usually very easy to find a reason to believe something that suits us, and it requires integrity and genuine honesty with oneself to examine one's own beliefs and motivations without falling into the trap of justifying our existing ways of seeing ourselves and the world around us. Edward Johns, this is the example. Edward Johns claimed to be a psychic, but when his abilities were tested under proper scientific conditions, they magically disappeared. Edward explained this, saying that one had to have faith in his abilities for them to work. Now, again, I'm not bashing anybody that could be psychic or have any telekinesis or any of that stuff. That's, again, ESP. It's for a whole other broadcast. You know, I go down that rabbit hole as it is. So don't worry about that. The point is, you have to understand, special pleading is exactly what they do with the Iraq War and all this other crap. You catch them in a lie, and they change the reason up. The Iraq War is a perfect example of special pleading. Weapons of mass destruction. Your claim was proven to be false. Well, we're giving freedom to the Muslims in the Middle East via these bombs that we drop on them. They're laser-guided. They're laser-guided freedom bombs. We just bring the freedom right in. America.
This is Sparta!
That's right, Leonidas. All right. King Leonidas is telling me the break is here. That means we've got about 20 seconds before I get cut off, ladies and gentlemen. Go take a break, stretch your feet, get a cup of coffee, get another hour. Class is still in session. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. It is July 2nd, 2014. Tonight, we're going over logical fallacies. Why am I doing this? Well, this is Logical Fallacies 201. We already did the basics. We already did the prereq course. I've done 2 shows on that. Okay, we're beyond that now. I think I respect you enough, and I believe in you enough, and I think that you're all smart enough to move on just from the basic few on to the next level. Again, if I give you this information, ladies and gentlemen, and I present this to you, this is not the end-all, be-all. I don't want you to walk away and going, well, I heard Popeye shows on logical fallacies. I'm an effing genius now. No, stop. Hold up. Hit the brakes. Stop for a second. This is just an introduction. This is just me showing you this stuff, showing you examples of how it's used against you, whether it be the powers it shouldn't be, or even by yourself or people in your everyday life. This is to get you to learn more. I want to inspire you to go out and do more research, okay? Because that's the way we're going to change things. Because by you actually sitting down and turning off the internet for 15 minutes, or turning off YouTube, or turning off, once the show is over, turning off the stream or whatever for 5 minutes and doing a little bit of research, turning off the damn TV for 5 minutes, doing a little research. If you did 20 minutes of research by yourself every day, everybody's like, I don't have the time. Well, time adds up, man. Take 10 or 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes a day, and pick a subject that you want to learn about and spend 20 minutes a day learning about that subject until you have learned it thoroughly. At the end of the week, you do it for 5 days. You take the weekends off, hang out with your kids if you can, and your wife. If you're single, whatever, then you spend more time doing it. But say you do it 5 days a week. What's 20 times 5? That's 100 minutes. That's over an hour and a half. You would have allotted at the end of the 5 days an hour and a half to go through this and learn. Well, Papa, I'm in my 40s. I think I pretty much know everything. That's another one of your damn problems, is you think you friggin' know everything. I used to be like that. And I love learning. And there was part of me, that ego inside of us, it happens to all of us. Like, you probably know that. Ego pops out. It loves to pop out, especially in debate and stuff like that. Uses logical fallacies left and right. You should learn something new every day, ladies and gentlemen. Consider yourself in school until you take your last breath. But consider school not boring school like we knew when we were kids, or these institutionalized, schools. Consider it fun. The world is a wondrous place. You should always take 5 minutes to learn something every day. Not a day should go by where you don't learn something new. Remember that. All right, so we're going to move on and get this done with, because we have a whole other column yet, and I got to finish up with the left column. So, back to yourlogicalfallacyis.com. We are on the bottom row of the left column. We're going to the bottom row. Everybody should be on special pleading. Everybody that's following along. Everybody should be on the special pleading fallacy. Now we're going on to the loaded question fallacy. The loaded question symbol's a little bomb with a question mark in it. You asked a question that had a presumption built into it so that it couldn't be answered without appearing guilty. Again, you asked a question that had a presumption built into it so that it couldn't be answered without appearing guilty. Loaded question fallacies are particularly effective at derailing rational debates because of their inflammatory nature. The recipient of the loaded question is compelled to defend themselves and may appear flustered or on the back foot, which, if they get flustered, remember, in a debate back and forth, if you have other people watching and listening to the debate, if they don't understand the full concept of logical fallacies, they don't even understand the basics. They don't understand what a loaded question is. Okay, that's why you'll hear somebody say, "Well, that's a loaded question." Well, if the people listening don't understand that, and the person that gets hit with a loaded question doesn't understand logical fallacies themselves, or isn't quick-witted and fast on their feet, that second and a half, 2 seconds of stumbling could be mistaken as weakness by the people listening and perhaps judging the debate. You see how it works? Debating is kind of like a sword fight. It's like and I mean, like, not stuff you see on TV, but like real old school, old-fashioned sword fights. Those guys trained. It was like dancing. Sword fighting, to a certain degree, it actually has you have to be an effective sword fighter. You have to be able to dance somewhat, almost. It's weird to hear. I know, for manly men, I guess, to hear someone say that. But what do you mean? I'm not a dancer. Well, yeah, you are. You're. If you've ever seen a sword fight, if you've ever seen a battle, yeah, there was hack and slash and stuff. But I'm talking about later on, where knights and things like that. It was a fine ballet. And that's what a debate is kind of like. It's like a ballet with swords, like a sword fight. And you have to know how to swing your sword. You have to know how to parry and thrust. If you don't, you're going to get in the neck. Maybe you get an arm hacked off or hit in the rib cage. Either way, you're going to go down. Whether it's a sword fight or a debate. Because a debate is really just a sword fight with words and intellect. Think about that. Anyway, here's the example of a loaded question. Grace and Helen were both romantically interested in Brad. One day, with Brad sitting within earshot, Grace asked in an inquisitive tone whether Helen was having any problems with a drug habit. And you'll see this stuff all the time. Somebody screwing over somebody else like that on purpose to make them look bad because she's interested in the guy. Happens all the time, right? Friends do it to each other. Some of the women out there are probably going, wow, when I was younger, I had a friend or a coworker or somebody that did that. Or maybe they've done it currently to you, right? It's actually a logical fallacy. Loaded question. Okay. Click the right arrow. Moving on. Burden of proof. So you know you're on the right one. The avatar, obviously it says burden of proof, but the avatar is a little guy with like a box on his back carrying it. You said that the burden of proof lies not with the person making the claim, but with someone else to disprove. The burden of proof lies with someone who is making a claim and is not upon anyone else to disprove. The inability or disinclination to disprove a claim does not render that claim valid, nor give it any credence whatsoever. However, it is important to note that we can never be certain of anything, and so we must assign value to any claim based on the available evidence. And to dismiss something on the basis that it hasn't been proven beyond all doubt is also fallacious reasoning. Example, Bertrand declares that a teapot is, at this very moment, in orbit around the sun between the Earth and Mars, and that because no one can prove him wrong, his claim is therefore a valid one. Kind of like Al Gore and the drowning polar bears. Even though polar bears are aquatic animals and they've been known to swim over 100 miles out to sea and hunt for food. But they're drowning. But because Al Gore said it, and nobody can prove me wrong, the burden of proof is on you. Oh, well, there's like a couple thousand scientists that have something other than what you think to say. Al, maybe you should hear them. No, they're all crazy kooks. They're all controlled by the GOP. Blah, blah, blah. Burden of proof. Moving on. Right arrow. Click it. Ambiguity. Oh, this happens all the time. You used a double meaning or ambiguity of language to mislead or misrepresent the truth. It's funny because when I read the next part, the first word is exactly what you think when you think of ambiguity. Politicians are often guilty of using ambiguity to mislead and will appear and will later point to how they were technically not outright lying if they come under scrutiny. Well, that happens all the time. Again, politicians are often guilty of using ambiguity to mislead and will later point to how they were technically not outright lying if they come under scrutiny. The reason that it qualifies as a fallacy is that it is intrinsically misleading. I mean, they're lying to you. On purpose. Well, I didn't mean to lie. Really? You didn't mean to lie? Example, when the judge asked the defendant why he hadn't paid his parking fines, he said that he shouldn't have to pay them because the sign said, fine for parking here. And so he naturally presumed that it would be fine to park there. Our politicians do the same thing. Well, I never said I never said that. I don't know what you're talking about. And then you go back to the videotape. Oh, well, blah, 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 blah. They do it all the time. Technically, I wasn't wrong, blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, the evidence that they give could be completely filled with garbage and lies, but you get the point. Anyway, click the right arrow, and we should be done with the entire left column. If you click the right arrow, you should move up to the next fallacy over in, because if you look back at the front page, you remember what I'm talking about, two columns, or two sets of columns. Now we're over on the left side of the page, in case anybody's just joining us. Click the top left avatar. It should be like a roulette wheel with a dollar sign in the middle of it. The gambler's fallacy. You said that, quote, runs, occur to statistically independent phenomena such as roulette wheel spins. This commonly believed fallacy can be said to have helped create an entire city in the desert of Nevada. Though the overall odds of a big run happening may be low, each spin on the wheel itself is entirely independent from the last. So while there may be a very small chance that heads will come up 20 times in a row if you flip a coin, the chances of heads coming up on each individual flip remain 50-50 for each individual flip and aren't influenced by what happened before. Example, red had come up 6 times in a row on the roulette wheel, so Greg knew that it was close to certain that black would be up next. Suffering an economic form of natural selection with this thinking, he soon lost all of his savings. The gambler's fallacy. It defies logic, that's why it's here. Moving on to the next one. Click the little right arrow. One that's used all the time, ladies and gentlemen. The bandwagon fallacy. You appealed to popularity or the fact that many people do something as an attempted form of validation. Well, Timmy and all his friends were jumping off the roof, Mom. How many times did we do this when we were kids? But it's still used against us to this very day. Again, you'll see this in all these fallacies. When I do this, it's not just so you're like, oh, thank you for the fallacies, Popeye. Now I can go out and fight the New World Order agenda. Yeah. No, it's not just that. Yes, you're going to see it with that, and that's a big part of why I want you to understand this. But it also help you in your own personal life because you will see this and run into these things every day. So the bandwagon fallacy. You appealed to popularity or the fact that many people do something as an attempted form of validation. The flaw in this argument is that the popularity of an idea has absolutely no bearing on its validity. If it did, then the earth would have made itself flat for most of history to accommodate this popular belief, right? Many people thought that the world was flat. There were people that literally, they were locked in jail for saying otherwise. You're a heretic. People literally were afraid when they would set sail that they could only set sail to a certain extent, and then they would fall off the horizon and fall off the edge of the earth. It was a popular belief for a very long time. Does it make it true? No, the earth is round. It's a sphere. But that doesn't mean that people didn't believe it. Bandwagon fallacy. Example. Seamus pointed a drunken finger at Sean and asked him to explain how many people could believe in leprechauns if they're only a silly old superstition. Sean, however, had a few too many Guinnesses himself and fell off his chair. The flaw in this argument, again, is that the popularity of an idea has absolutely no bearing on its validity. If it did, then the earth would have made itself flat for most of history to accommodate this popular belief. You appealed to popularity or the fact that many people do something as an attempted form of validation. Just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean it's correct. If everybody was running around and sacrificing their firstborn with a knife and just running out in the street and slitting their children's throats, would it be acceptable? Or do you think maybe you'd have an issue with that? I mean, use your brain. The reason I use drastic examples like that sometimes is because you need that to snap you into reality, make you look at a situation and be like, huh? Case in point, if you're in an area where maybe it's popular to bash gun ownership, everybody starts jumping on the bandwagon. Guns kill people. They start using logical fallacies left and right. You ask one of these people. Ask them. Why? Well, because all these people in the country want gun control. What does Nancy Pelosi say? Oh, there's a majority of people that want gun control. Dianne Feinstein. There's a majority of the public that wants gun control. Hillary Clinton said it the other day. There's a majority of people that want gun control, which is actually not true. The majority of people are against it. Over 50% of people are against it. But They want you to hop on the bandwagon. So they're trying to get you to do so. And people go, oh my God, Hillary Clinton is so smart. She's committing logical fallacies. And it's not like she doesn't know. She's doing it on purpose. She's doing it right in your face. But it's cool. It's cool. Don't pay attention to that. She's so cool. She just wrote a book. I mean, after all, she's Hillary Clinton. Come on, Popeye. She's awesome. Ugh. Anyway, click the little black arrow. Moving on to the next one. Appeal to authority. Should be a little king's hat. You said that because an authority thinks something, it must therefore be true. I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about the nutritionist. Again, this goes to government, doctors, anybody that you think is a quote-unquote authority figure. I'm doing air quotes when I say that. It's important to note that this fallacy should not be used to dismiss the claims of experts or scientific consensus. Appeals to authority are not valid arguments, but nor is it reasonable to disregard the claims of experts who have a demonstrated depth of knowledge unless one has a similar level of understanding and or access to empirical evidence. However, it is entirely possible that the opinion of a person or institution of authority is wrong. Therefore, the authority that such a person or institution holds does not have any intrinsic bearing upon whether their claims are true or not. I'm going to read it to you again because this one is really important because people fall prey to the appeal to emotion all the time. In fact, Luke Rudowski did the appeal to authority all the time. Luke Rudowski did a great video exposing this a couple of years ago where he was trying to expose how people they appeal to authority, but he did it in a way of he put on a black suit and he put on sunglasses and combed his hair back, put like an earpiece in his ear, and he went on a subway train, and he just looked like some official. He never said he was a government agent or he never said anything. He was a cop. Never said he was I'm a reporter with Fox News. Nothing. He just he stood there, trying to look all, his hands behind his back and his sunglasses on and in the suit, and people really assumed. Like he would start going up and talking to people. You could see it on camera. People assumed that he was some authority figure, and they would start talking to him and answering his questions just because he looked to be an authority figure. And the whole point of it was to expose how people do that. Well, that's appeal to authority. Again, you said that because an authority thinks something, it must therefore be true. Well, Hillary Clinton's an authority. She thinks guns should be banned. Well, I guess we should just ban guns. Right? You see how easy that works? Again, it's important to note that this fallacy should not be used to dismiss the claims of experts or scientific consensus. Appeals to authority are not valid arguments, but it's not reasonable to disregard the claims of experts who have a demonstrated depth of knowledge, unless one has a similar level of understanding and access to empirical evidence, which then you would be able to debate them and show them how they were wrong. However, it is entirely possible that the opinion of a person or institution of authority is wrong. Therefore, the authority that such a person or institution holds does not have any intrinsic bearing upon whether their claims are true or not. And when you hear the powers that shouldn't be, the politicians, the news media, okay, they'll appear in police cases, right? The cops will come on after, if say a cop is, for gun control or against cannabis, right? They'll come on and they'll say, in cannabis it's getting much harder to do, but with guns, they'll say a cop comes on and says, well, I don't think that normal everyday citizens should have access to firearms. There's a lot of police chiefs that think like that. I don't think normal everyday citizens should have access to firearms. Only police and military should have access to firearms. So this say a police chief comes on like MSNBC Rachel Maddow show, right? Comes on her show, that's what he says. I don't think just anybody should have access to guns. Well, the reason these news broadcasts, right? News programming, that's why they call it programming, ladies and gentlemen. There's a reason for that. They're presenting you with logical fallacy-filled arguments. They know that, but that's what they're supposed to do. So having this guy come on and say that, and then, Maddow or whoever else the presenter is, I'm just using her as an example, would, well, you're totally right, and then blah, 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 thank you for your time, Chief, and then, go on to a diatribe once they're gone, and during that diatribe will say, and you just heard here a police chief say that, we need gun control. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a police chief saying it. That's appeal to authority. So because this person in this supposed position of authority thinks a certain way, you should just automatically jump on the bandwagon, right? You see? See how easy that happens? Anyway, click the right hour. We're going to go to the next one. Let me check and make sure I have enough time here. Yes, we do. Cool. Okay. The next one. Everybody with me? It looks like two moons facing each other, like two crescent moons facing each other. That's what the avatar looks like. And the title is Composition/Division. Again, we're on the composition/division fallacy. You assumed that one part of something has to be applied to all, or other parts of it, or that the whole must apply to its parts. I know that sounds a little confusing. I'll go over it again. Often when something is true for the part, it does also apply to the whole, or vice versa. But the crucial difference is whether there exists good evidence to show that this is the case. Because we observe consistencies in things, our thinking can become biased so that we presume consistency to exist where it does not. Often when something is true for the part, it does also apply to the whole, or vice versa. But the crucial difference is whether there exists good evidence to show that this is the case. Because we observe consistencies in things, our thinking can become biased so that we presume consistency to exist where it does not. Example, Daniel was a precocious child and had a liking for logic. He reasoned that atoms are invisible and that he was made of atoms, and therefore he was invisible too. Unfortunately, despite his thinking skills, he lost the game of hide-and-go-seek every time. Again, often when something is true for the part, it does also apply to the whole, or vice versa. But the crucial difference is whether there exists good evidence to show that this is the case. Because we observe consistencies in things, our thinking can become biased so that we presume consistency to exist where it does not. Composition-division fallacy, ladies and gentlemen. Again, for those of you just joining us, perhaps you just tuned in, yourlogicalfallacyis.com, yourlogicalfallacyis.com. If you're on the front page of the website, on the right side, we're over on the right column now, and you will see, because we went from left to right, and we're on the second row of the right column, composition and division. Let me see how much time we got. We got about a minute before the break, so I'll pause it there. What I'll do is, we're on composition and division. Click the right arrow right now, and we're going to go to the next one. No true Scotsman. And we're going to leave it here, and I'll pick up with this fallacy on the other side. I'll pick up with the description of it, and we'll get into it. This, again, is not the end-all, be-all of learning this stuff. This is me lighting a fire under your rear ends to go educate yourselves further. Okay? I'm just laying out the basics with my analysis of it. Again, I'm trying to make learning fun. Because sometimes this might sound tedious. I mean, how many radio show hosts actually come on air and give a 2-hour lesson in logical fallacies? So I got to make it fun for you guys so you learn from it, and that you want to stay tuned. You want to stay tuned in to the truth frequency, as Chris would say. Stay tuned. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, for the final segment of tonight's live edition of DTRH. Again, yourlogicalfallacyis.com, yourlogicalfallacyis.com. No, these guys did not give me anything for free to talk about their website. I'm using it as a reference point. And this isn't the end-all, be-all, by the way, website to go to. This is more like a quick pop-up reference guide. A good, quick pop-up reference guide. Thanks for the nickname for it there, Aaron. I know you're listening. I saw him posted on Facebook. It's a perfect title for what this is. The website is more of a pop-up reference guide. So if you're in a debate, you're whatever, and you, even just to go back and educate yourself, like I said, take 20, 30 minutes a day to educate yourself. But if, say you're debating with somebody online, right, and you're chatting with them, or you're having a Skype conversation, however you're doing it, and they start dropping, logical fallacies left and right, point it out. Hey, I got my old account on Facebook, the one with a couple thousand friends and bazillions of followers and all these connections. I've been trying to rebuild it up for the show, right, past couple months. I got mine closed because I engaged somebody in a debate. Thanks, Scott, by the way, for dragging me in. Scott knows who he is. He's a long-time listener, and we've become friends. And Scott's a cool guy, but you prick. Anyway, it's not his fault. But he dragged me into a conversation on Facebook, and I got my Facebook account banned for it, right? Why did I get banned? Because the people couldn't handle me schooling them. I wasn't yelling or arguing. I was just like, you're committing logical fallacies, and here's the fallacy you're committing. Bam. And I would give them the information, and they got mad because I made them look stupid. So you're going to run into these situations, but don't be deterred by it. Don't. We need to get this out there. We need to make people think again. Look, people used to think. Mankind had to be retarded down. All I'm trying to do is reverse the trend. And I'm turning the rudder, and we're going back into enlightenment and intelligence again. But this show is not the end-all, be-all. Look up logical fallacies. Look up Jan Irvin. He's got some great work on the trivium and logical fallacies. There's so many other great, intelligent, free-thinking individuals that talk about logical fallacies and free thought and stuff like this, and debate and rhetoric and rules of rational argumentation, that I urge you to not just listen to me, but go seek them out. Do your research. Anyway, we left off on the No True Scotsman. Otherwise, I'll be sitting here and I'll never get this finished. I'll just sit here and rant the whole rest of the segment. So, No True Scotsman, that's the fallacy we're on. You made what could be called an appeal to purity as a way to dismiss relevant criticisms or flaws of your argument. In this form of faulty reasoning, one's belief is rendered unfalsifiable because no matter how compelling the evidence is, one simply shifts the goalposts so that it wouldn't apply to a supposedly true example. This kind of post-rationalization is a way of avoiding valid criticisms of one's argument. Again, in this form of faulty reasoning, one's belief is rendered unfalsifiable because no matter how compelling the evidence is, one simply shifts the goalposts so that it wouldn't apply to a supposedly true example. This kind of post-rationalization is a way of avoiding valid criticisms of one's argument. Example: Angus declares that Scotsmen do not put sugar on their porridge, to which Lachlan points out that he is a Scotsman and puts sugar on his porridge. Furious, like a true Scot, Angus yells that no true Scotsman sugars his porridge. So instead of, you can see, now that might sound like a weird example, but I'll break it down. Angus declared that he stood up, Scotsmen do not put sugar on porridge. And Lachlan, who is a Scotsman, pointed out, hey, I'm a Scotsman and I put sugar on my porridge. So Angus post-rationalized his argument and said, well, no true Scotsman sugars his porridge. When he was factually proven wrong, his statement was factually proven wrong because here's his homie who is a Scotsman and he's putting sugar on his food. Get it? It's a very simple way of looking at this. And if you understand this on a base level, even when you get hit with the more complicated arguments, depending on what you're debating, because you're not always going to be debating putting sugar on porridge, right? You'll still be able to see it. But you have to have that basic foundation in your noodle. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I could lead the horse to water, but I can't make it drink. You have to educate yourselves. Please. That's how we're going to save humanity, is by making everybody smart again. Moving on, click that little black arrow to the right. Genetic. You judge something as either good or bad on the basis of where it comes from or from whom it came. This fallacy avoids the argument by shifting focus onto something's or someone's origins. It's similar to an ad hominem fallacy in that it leverages existing negative perceptions to make someone's argument look bad without actually presenting a case for why the argument itself lacks merit. Example. Accused on the 6 o'clock news of corruption and taking bribes, the senator said that we should all be very wary of the things we hear in the media because we all know how very unreliable the media can be. Now, I'm going to read the definition of it again. So you can, because this is an important one. Again, this is one that's used, it's a version of an ad hominem. It's similar to it, but I look at it as almost like a branch off of it. If you kind of look at the basics as kind of like the foundation and everything, you kind of spans off it. You'll notice that that's how kind of it does. And fallacies, a lot of these logical fallacies build off of other fallacies, or people will use them to build off of other fallacies. It's like Legos. Anyway, this fallacy avoids the argument by shifting focus onto some things or someone's origins. It is similar to an ad hominem fallacy in that it leverages existing negative perceptions to make someone's argument look bad without actually presenting a case for why that argument itself lacks any merit. The genetic fallacy. All right, moving on. Click the little arrow on the right. Black or white should be a black and white checkerboard inside the little square there. That should be the avatar on the top of the page, and then it should say black or white. You presented two alternative states as the only possibilities when in fact more possibilities exist. Oh, you mean the two-party system? The way people think with voting is a huge logical fallacy, the black and white fallacy, also known as the false dilemma. This insidious tactic has the appearance of forming a logical argument, but under closer scrutiny it becomes evident that there are more possibilities than the either-or choice that is being presented. Binary, black or white thinking, doesn't allow for the many different variables, conditions, and contexts in which there would exist more than just the two possibilities put forth. It frames the argument misleadingly and obscures rational, honest debate. Well, if that doesn't sum up our political situation currently, you voted third party. Why? There's no third parties never have a chance. Only vote Democrat or Republican. Black or white fallacy. Now, don't get me wrong. You know how I feel about voting on a national level with stolen elections as it is anyway. But you see, our current political system, black or white fallacy. It's literally, the whole system is a huge fallacy. You presented two alternative states as the only possibilities, when in fact more possibilities exist. I'm going to read it one more time for you. Also known as the false dilemma, this insidious tactic has the appearance of forming a logical argument, but under closer scrutiny, it becomes evident that there are more possibilities than the either-or choice that is presented. Binary, black or white thinking doesn't allow for the many different variables, conditions, and contexts in which there would exist more than just the two possibilities put forth. It frames the argument misleadingly and obscures rational, honest debate. I'm going to repeat that last line one more time. It frames the argument. You hear me talk about this all the time. You hear me telling you all the time how the news media, I told you tonight, they frame things using logical fallacies. It frames the argument misleadingly and obscures rational, honest debate. And if that ain't true, I don't know what is. That is a perfect example of our political system currently. Anyway, moving on. Begging the question. Begging the question. Now, this is a logical fallacy, but it's also a term used when speaking. You've even heard me say this on air numerous times. Well, that begs the question. I'm sure you've heard people say it on news, TV shows, whatever, when they're being interviewed on radio, other hosts. Well, that begs the question. Well, there's the term begging the question, and then there's the fallacy begging the question. As long as you're not using the term beg the question, J. Michael Springman said that when he was working in the passport office or working in the State Department, passport division, whatever it was, over in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, that even though he spotted terrorists and, coming for trying to get passports, and he said, look, these guys came up on the list, watch list, blah, 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 blah. No, give them the passports anyway. And these guys were the 9/11 hijackers, right? Well, that begs the question. See how I use that? That begs the question. Did our government have a hand in the 9/11 attacks at all? Now, that's the proper use of that term in that scenario, but that's not the begging the question logical fallacy. I wanted to separate that so people understood that, because I see a lot of times people go, no, begging the question is a logical fallacy and you're misusing it. There's the term begging the question, and then there's the logical fallacy begging the question. Two different things. Once you understand the differences, you can understand how not to use each one in the wrong place. Here we go. Begging the question fallacy. You presented a circular argument in which the conclusion was included in the premise. This logically incoherent argument often arises in situations where people have an assumption that is very ingrained and therefore taken in their minds as a given. Circular reasoning is bad mostly because it's not very good. Example. The word of Zorbo the Great is flawless and perfect. We know this because it says so in the great and infallible book of Zorbo's best and most truest things that are definitely true and should not ever be questioned. Get it? Again, you presented a circular argument in which the conclusion was included in the premise. In the example, the first line, the word of Zorbo the Great is flawless and perfect. So they're starting off it's a circular argument because they're starting off the conclusion already, okay? They're starting off the argument with the conclusion in it, that this guy's already flawless and great. They don't build up to that. And then the rest of the argument just continues to push that line of thinking. We know this because it says so in the great and infallible book of Zorbo's best and most truest things that are definitely true and should not ever be questioned. This logically incoherent argument often arises in situations where people have an assumption that is very ingrained and therefore taken in their minds as a given. Circular reasoning is bad mostly because it is not very good. Begging the question fallacy. All right, moving on. Click the little arrow to the right. Appeal to nature. You argued that because something is natural, it is therefore valid, justified, inevitable, good, or ideal. Many natural things are also considered good, and this can bias our thinking. But naturalness itself doesn't make something good or bad. For instance, murder can be seen as very natural, but that doesn't mean it's good or justifiable. Example. The medicine man rolled into town on his bandwagon offering you various natural remedies, such as very special plain water. He said that it was only natural that people should be wary of artificial medicines, such as antibiotics. You could argue about the whole antibiotic thing. Again, the examples are just there to kind of show you how the fallacy was used during the example. Don't allow the examples to drag you off onto a side tangent, because it'll happen. It'll happen. Don't allow it. Again, you're just trying to learn the fallacies. Appeal to nature. You argue that because something is natural, it is therefore valid, justified, inevitable, good, or ideal. Well, hurricanes are natural. I wouldn't say that they're a great thing for anybody that's in their way. Anyway, we have 3 left. Let's see how much time we got. Make sure I got enough time to go out. Yeah, I do. Cool. All right. Anecdotal. You used a personal experience or an isolated example instead of sound argument or compelling evidence. This happens all the time. When you see the news media, they take a one incident, maybe a kid, a toddler will find his parents' gun, and I keep using guns and gun control right now because that's a very prevalent topic in the news. So I'm trying to use something that's in everybody's mind at the present moment as an example. So they'll find a toddler that might have found a gun Maybe the parents were idiots and they left the gun laying around, and the kid shoots himself, kills himself. 2 years old, blows his brains out. Very horrible thing, right? But this doesn't happen all the time. I mean, it does happen, but if you looked at it like on a numbers thing, compared to how many people are out there, gun owners and guns and homes and everything else, it doesn't happen as often as they would have you believe. They, the powers that shouldn't be, in the news media. But they'll take that anecdotal story and they will run with it as a national headline for 3 days. Again, you use the personal experience or an isolated example, in that case being a little kid finding the gun, an isolated example, and it happens, it's not a single isolated event, but in comparing it to the numbers of actually, of gun owners, like I said, and guns and homes and everything else, and the amount of people, it is isolated. And by bringing it up as the oh my God, this is the case we need to make, ban guns. Again, there's more to it. Logical fallacies. It's often much easier for people to believe someone's testimony as opposed to understanding complex data and variation across a continuum. Quantitative scientific measures are almost always more accurate than personal perceptions and experiences, but our inclination is to believe that which is tangible to us and or the word of someone we trust over a more abstract statistical reality. Now, statistics and things that they can be off, but I understand. Anyway, here's the example. Jason said that was all cool and everything, but his grandfather smoked like 30 cigarettes a day and lived until 97. So don't believe everything you read about meta-analysis of methodologically sound studies showing proven causal relationships, meaning that cigarettes cause cancer. So because this guy's grandfather smoked for however long and never died, lived in 97, then he thinks that it's all BS. And look, my grandfather lived. Well, maybe your grandfather was the exception to the rule in that case. And I have to move off of this one because I'm running out of time, and I know myself. I'm going to end up like going off on a tangent on this one. That's why I had to stop myself before. Anyway, anecdotal. You used your personal experience or an isolated example instead of a sound argument or compelling evidence. It doesn't mean that your personal experience was not valid, but if that's your only evidence for something, it could have been you yourself could have been the isolated example in that one. Anyway, the Texas sharpshooter. We got two left. The Texas sharpshooter. The avatar is a little target. You cherry-picked a data cluster to suit your argument or found a pattern to fit a presumption. This false cause fallacy, see how they roll into one another? This false cause fallacy is coined after a marksman shooting randomly at barns and then painting bullseye targets around the spot where the most bullet holes appear, making it appear as if he's really a good shot. Clusters naturally appear by chance, but don't necessarily indicate that there is a causal relationship. But I must remind you, as I said earlier, there are times that clusters do appear and there is a causal relationship. So you can't overlook that either, because you can't just, I'm sure if you were looking into like cancer clusters around cities and stuff like that, you would have their attorneys use they would say, you're using the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, blah, 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 you're cherry picking. So, I mean, yes, I wanted to add that on there. There is, clusters do happen by chance, whatever you want to call it, but they also do happen because of a causal relationship at times. So the example given for the Texas sharpshooter is the makers of Sugarette candy drinks point to research showing that of the 5 countries where Sugarette drinks sell the most units, 3 of them are in the top 10 healthiest countries on Earth. Therefore, Sugarette drinks are healthy. Sounds like Monsanto. Just replace Sugarette candy drinks with Monsanto. Same type of garbage thinking. Anyway, moving on to the next one. We're on the Texas sharpshooter. Hit the right arrow, and we're going to go to the last fallacy for the evening, ladies and gentlemen. The last one. Class is almost over. We got about 5.5 minutes left. Class is almost over. Relax. Middle ground. You claim that a compromise or middle point between two extremes must be the truth. Much of the time, truth does indeed lie between two extreme points, but this can bias our thinking. Sometimes a thing is simply untrue, and a compromise of it is also untrue. Halfway between truth and a lie is still a lie. Example. And this is what I was talking about with vaccines. Holly said that vaccinations cause autism in children, but her scientifically well-read friend Caleb said that this claim had been debunked and proven false, which, no, that in itself is a fallacy. Their friend Alice offered a compromise that vaccinations must cause some autism, just not all autism. Now, if you want me to, it was like the one example I didn't want to use, but I used it anyway. But for a second, even the example they give kind of is fallacy ridden, because it says, but her scientifically well-read friend Caleb said that this claim has been debunked and proven false. And this is why I wanted to use this example, so I could show this to you. Because even in this example, there's a fallacy. It's appeal to authority. Her scientifically well-read friend Caleb said that this had been debunked and proven false. Right? So it's an appeal almost somewhat, if you believe that guy, to some level of authority because he's well-read. And then their friend Alice is supposed to play the third one, and she comes in and says, well, the middle ground is that vaccinations only cause some autism. They actually don't cause the autism itself. They end up damaging forget what it's called, it's a sheath of something around the brain, and basically it's like a barrier that protects the brain from absorbing harmful things or things from penetrating. This barrier prevents things from penetrating and getting into the brain itself. And the vaccines break it down, and then the garbage gets in there, and then brain damage can occur and things like that. So technically, I guess you could say the vaccines don't really cause the autism. They lead to something else which actually causes the autism. But anyway, middle ground. You claim that a compromise or middle point between two extremes must be the truth. Much of the time, the truth does indeed lie between two extreme points, but this can bias our thinking. Sometimes a thing is simply untrue, and a compromise of it is also untrue. Halfway between the truth and a lie is still a lie. So, we were justified in going into Iraq. No, we weren't. It was completely immoral and illegal. There was no reason to go in there whatsoever. And then the other side is, we had to go in there for freedom, weapons of mass destruction, blah. So then the middle ground would be, okay, look, you didn't find weapons of mass destruction, but hey, we brought freedom to the Middle East, so maybe the war wasn't so bad, right? Really? We brought freedom to the Middle East? Have you looked at the Middle East lately? We didn't bring anything but chaos and mayhem. Anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked. You get my point. Middle ground. One more time, you claim that a compromise or middle point between two extremes must be the truth. And of course, sometimes, yes, there's like the old saying, there's one side of the story, the other side of the story, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Well, and although that does occur, again, like the explanation says, sometimes things are just not true, and it does not matter if you want to use this fallacy or not. Halfway between a lie and a truth is still a lie, because it's either true or it's not true. Okay? Yes, I know there's varying levels and there's gray areas, but when it comes to facts, it's either a fact or it's not. It's either true or it's false. You can't have the middle ground lying somewhere, well, okay, we can find a happy medium. No, because you're committing a fallacy. You're committing a logical fallacy. You're not thinking. You're not using that big noodle that you have in your head. That big pile of gray matter that we all have. We have supercomputers in our heads, and we're too busy playing video games and watching cat videos and watching Dancing with the Stars to turn it on. Unplug from that crap and turn your brain on. I have faith in all of you. That's why I do these shows, because I know that if you actually apply yourselves, I believe in you. I know a lot of people have given up on you and think, oh, you guys, humanity's stupid. I don't think humanity's stupid at all, ladies and gentlemen. Although I do see examples all the time that humanity is completely retarded down, I don't think that you're dumb forever. I think there's a way of turning it around. I think we can save humanity. I was ignorant to a lot of this stuff too. I had to educate myself. So I'm just like you. Apply yourself, and you can do it. With that, we're out of time. Research logical fallacies, ladies and gentlemen. Do your homework. Train yourself. You will start to see this. And when you see people engaging in logical fallacies, call them out. Don't be arrogant pricks about it, because you might come off like that. Do it properly. I love you all. And as I tell you, the solutions to our problems are an inside job. I'm out of here.